All right, so here's a classic problem they want us to solve this equation. So remember a couple things. First of all, notice that what's the period? Always remember what the period is related to. Period equals 2 pi divided by b, which is 3. So the period is 2/3. Here's what that means. Normally, a sine graph would start here in the center, it go up and down and here over 2 pi, right? But this period is 2/3 of a pi, which means it's going to do that 3 times by the time it gets there. So in 2/3, here's 2/3 of a pi. Here's 4/3 of a pi. And there's 6/3 of a pi, which is 2 pi, right? It's going to go through that cycle 1, 2, 3 times. So how many solutions are there going to be between 0 and 2 pi? Normally, at -1, there would be how many? Let's draw a line in here. Let's draw our line at -1, which would be down here, right?
Yeah.
I know I didn't draw those graphs exactly right, but you got the point. Normally, it would have only hit it one time right there if the period was 2 pi. But it's actually going to hit it 1, 2, remember that's down there?
Yeah,
3. It's going to hit it 3 times. Okay, that's the first thing to remember. So if you understand that mental picture, you can recognize that, oh yeah, there's going to be 3 answers that I'm going to have to do. So how do I do that? I like to use u substitution. I like to say let u equal 3 theta. Okay, so let's rewrite this. Where is the sine of u equal to -1? What would u have to be for the sine to be equal to -1?
U would have to be pi over 2. Pi over...
No.
Yeah, pi over 2. No.
Think about where the sine is negative. It's where the sine, which is the y-coordinate, is -1, which happens at 3 pi over 2. Here's my unit circle.
Oh, yep.
There's my sine.
That's fine.
Got it? So it's at 3 pi over 2, but remember, what did u equal? U equaled 3 theta. So substitute 3 theta back in. 3 theta equals 3 pi over 2. Or it could equal what besides 3 pi over 2? Because remember, it's going around the circle. If I think of my unit circle, it can be here or it could be a whole nother time around, so add another 2 pi to it.
Okay.
So it could be 7 pi over 2, right? Because I'm adding 2 pi, which is 4 pi over 2. Or I can add another 4 pi to it, which would be 11 pi over 2.
Yeah.
So I can keep adding and adding and adding. You follow? So it's 7 pi over 2 and 11 pi over 2. So my answers are actually... And I go around it 3 times. Yep, I'm not done yet. I'll get there. I'm not done yet, right?
Okay.
I'm saying that 3 theta equals any of these things.
Oh, okay.
So what does theta have to equal?
Theta has to equal 1 over 3.
And divide all those things by 3. In other words, multiply the bottom by 3. It would be 3 pi over 6, which is pi over 2.
Okay.
Or 7 pi over 6.
Okay. Oh,
Or
okay.
11 pi over 6.
Alright.
Now you'll notice that this last answer, is really close to 2 pi, so you know that you probably don't have any more, because you could have kept going, right?
Yeah.
You could have kept going, but there's no need to, because we did that pictorial. Now here's another way you could do this problem. Some people prefer to do it this way. Another way, you could just say, right off the bat, you can just say, you can get this one. You can say 3 theta equals 3 pi over 2, which means theta equals pi over 2.
Yeah.
And then you can add the period to it until it gets past what you want, because you know the period is 2 pi over 3. You know it's going to keep hitting that spot over and over again. So you could do this, plus or even minus sometimes, but in this case it's just going to be plus 2 pi over 3 times k. Okay, now some people like this, some people don't. I prefer to do it the way that I did it before, but I'll show you how to do this. So this would be pi over 2. That's your first one. Then it would be pi over 2 plus 2 pi over 3. And then it would be pi over 2 plus 4 pi over 3, because I added it again. Now these, you'd have to do some math with these, right? You'd have to convert these to 3 pi over 6, and this would be 4 pi over 6. So there's 7 pi over 6. So there's that one. And then this one, again, over 6, this would be 3 pi over 6, and this would be 8 pi over 6. So that's 11 pi over 6. You could do it that way if you want. Either way will work, but that's how you solve when there is an argument of your trig argument that is double or triple or even a quadruple angle. So if this number, here's how I like to tell people, if that number there usually tells you how many times you have to go around the circle. So usually you know you're going to have 3 times as many. Not always, but usually you're going to have 3 times as many solutions as you would have had.